The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Yes, we're born to be alive. You're listening to Rosie Pekar on Until Now on W4CY. If you'd like to join the live chat, because we're talking about all things technological and digital disruptors. And with that song, Born to be Alive, never is it more prevalent to be alive when we're being overtaken by artificial intelligence. It seems being alive is no longer a prerequisite on this planet. However, if you'd like to join the live chat and add in your 2 bobs worth, yes, it's an Australian who's speaking, head across to w4cy.com and click on the link on the right-hand side and you can ask our questions, because today's guest is just that, a digital disruptor. And if you've ever wanted to know what one is and what that's all about, now is the time to learn. And it's a good friend of mine, Stephen Prideaux. Welcome.
Hello, Rosie. How are you?
Good. We're back to talk all things disrupted yet again with technology. And, you know, last time we did this show, which is about the way technology is headed, what to watch out for yourself personally as well as professionally with things to do with technology, the terror of technology, I guess. But the last time we did this show, the program actually got accidentally, and I use that word accidentally very, very loosely, deleted. So we're going to do it all over again, because it was a must to have, not only like we had a lot of questions that were there to be answered, but also it really deserves to be a permanent record so people have it to help themselves in the future to minimise misconduct and fraud both in the private and public sector.
Well, it's my pleasure to be back here again.
Good. Now, listeners asked, does it have to do with Mercury in retrograde? Well, I have no idea, because I'm not talking about planets and what's out there. I'm talking about technology, which, yes, I agree, can really be a pain. But this is when, you know, for example, Siri, that my friend Stephen was showing to me, it's amazing its uses. However, at the same time, being, you know, former law enforcement over, you know, 8 years as a cop, another 8 years as an investigator, instantly my brain was afire with all the misuse that is prevalent within technology. But Steve, you mentioned last time, you know, specific strategies to use to your advantage. But just before we go on to those, just let us know a little bit about yourself, what you do today.
Yeah, look, I run an IT startup factory or an investment fund in Australia. We have about 10 different companies within the family, of all at various stages, and most of them to do with various degrees of digital disruption.
Exactly, and your background wasn't obviously like many of us today. You know, we have originally, was it IBM founder who said, I see a world with only 5 computers, and discarded the idea of computers in every home. Whereas now we see we have, you know, many people opting for a laptop lifestyle. You know, the ease, the convenience, the simplicity, the speed. It has so many lures and attractions that most of us, and especially with the advent of the mobile phone, are accessing, you know, everything online.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, my history pre-IT was 20 years in the sort of film and technology business. When I say technology, it was the delivery of film mediums. So that was, you know, through video, through DVD, through taking products to pay TV, etc. Our American people would be very aware of Blockbuster, which was a massive, big household name in America. I looked after their interests in Australia and and Asia Pacific, and that was a business that absolutely got disrupted, and partly digital. A little business called Netflix, which is now about a $66 billion company in America, started disrupting Blockbuster by mailing movies, DVDs in envelopes all around America, so people didn't have to go to video stores anymore. But then ultimately their transition was to use technology to be able to deliver movies electronically into your home, so you didn't even have to leave the couch to go to the letterbox. So
exactly. So as video killed the radio star, it was Netflix has killed the video star, or the film, or put a dent in the film industry.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I've told this story many times that disruption never stops. The golden days of Hollywood was all about the cinemas. When the humble video recorder was invented in the early 80s, Jack Valenti, who was the president of the Motion Picture Association of America, thought it was going to be the demise of Hollywood. For people to be able to actually take home a little black box and watch a movie in their home instead of have to go to the cinemas was going to be the end of Hollywood. And all it did was it accelerated it, made it bigger, made the studios a hell of a lot more profit. And in the end, the home video sector represented about 54% of Hollywood's revenue. So, that model got disrupted, but it made it a better commodity that people like to use. And then ultimately DVD did that to VHS, and Netflix did it to video stores, and so on and so forth. And I'm really, looking forward to seeing where that evolves to in the future.
And I guess, if we go really old school, it's a bit like, the light outdid the candle. We supersede the uses we once had. As one listener has asked, do you feel technology has been a good thing for us so far? Well, it depends, again, from a customer's perspective, to have the ease and comfort of things in your own home. And as we know, many, businesses these days are pajama businesses. You don't have to dress up to go to work.
Absolutely. I see that everywhere we go, especially in our sector with web developers, games programmers, and those sorts of things. They can work day and night, and they can work from any little corner of the world. As long as they've got an internet connection, they're in the office.
Exactly. And as we've discovered with a lot of outsourcing of programs, overseas, because again, the technology is superseding human beings' understanding of the technology. So this is, I guess, the old argument of alive versus artificial. Your smartphone today is outsmarting you.
No doubt about that at all. The powers and technology in mobile phones is phenomenal. And app developers and software developers are just really starting to learn what else they can actually do with the technology that already exists. So it's not they're trying to invent new technology. It's they're trying to invent ways for you to communicate with your device, and your device to be able to communicate with you on hardware and functionality that is already in existence. And the evolution of the virtual assistants, if you'd like to call them, of Siri on an iPhone, and Microsoft's Cortana, and Alexa is the Amazon's equivalent, and of course, Google have one as well, but it's just simply called Google Home, which is probably a little less sexist than having a female assistant, I guess. But it's incredible, the power and the technology of what's there, but also a little scary in terms of what they're doing in the background while you're going about your everyday life.
And that's the thing that I want those listeners today to understand, that, everything that you use to your advantage, someone else can also access and use to your disadvantage. So, don't be outsmarted. Keep your smarts about you whilst utilising, the wonderful aspects of technology. So, for example, Siri, as you demonstrated, with me, that it gives, instantly information and collects information personally, all to do with you. It's listening in all the time, and every keystroke that you make on any piece of technology is recorded, and it's recorded as a personal preference. So people think, oh my God, this is amazing. It must be meant to be that I've got to go on this holiday in Fiji because this is the third time it's popped up on my screen. It's like, no, you actually typed an inquiry in once upon a time or followed a link about holidays or to do with Fiji, and they're now simply making a sale to you or a pitch to you to get your sale. It's not psychic.
No, it is not. It is just very, very clever use of technology by online merchants. It's as simple as that. Siri is really your friend at the table. If you were sitting around a table with 8 people and your mobile phone was sitting on the table, I could say, hey, Rosie, what a fabulous day on the Gold Coast it is today. The beaches look lovely. Hey, Wendy, how are the kids going in school? Then I say, hey, Siri, what's the weather in New York today? And bang, the mobile phone will activate, turn itself on. And, of course, Siri will tell me exactly what the weather is in New York right now. So she's listening to everything you do, everything you say, and trying to make meaning out of it and saying, is that for me? Is that for me? Is that for me? Whoops, this one is for me. I will respond. And quite often I get interrupted by my phone when I haven't asked it for anything because Siri has misinterpreted my instructions.
Yes. And I guess the other side of it, as I mentioned, always playing the devil's advocate, as good as and handy as that is for us to get information, it's also handy to those people who want to use that information against us.
Look, definitely. The next evolution of artificial intelligence is, you talked before about online shopping habits. So, if you look up something on eBay, for argument's sake, and say, oh, that looks like a reasonable deal, and then you shut it down, you don't activate it, you don't purchase it, you could jump onto a news site, jump onto the NewYorkTimes.com, say, I want to read the newspaper, and lo and behold, there's an ad in the corner of the New York Times for exactly the item that you were thinking about buying yesterday, and in all sorts of other parts of the news feeds, because it's building in the background an impression of you, your wants, your desires, and trying to find ways for you to fulfill those, and obviously and financially reward the person who provides that to you. The artificial intelligence aspect of that is your mobile devices actually listening to what you're talking about, interpreting that, and then using your virtual DNA, if I can call it that, to create a fingerprint or a footprint of exactly who you are and what you're looking for, and it will start channeling your news, your live data feeds, what's in your social media. We all know now with the evolution of Facebook, you don't see everything your friends post. It just starts, if you interact with somebody a lot online, you'll tend to see whatever they do. If you've got a friend on Facebook that you don't really interact with, you don't comment on their things, they don't comment on yours, you don't message each other. Quite often they could be, quite busy posters, but you won't see a lot of what they're actually putting online because Facebook's deemed that it's probably not relevant to you. This is much more relevant to you. So it's channeling what it wants you to know, what it wants you to see. And through artificial intelligence, your sponsored ads, things that pop up in your news feed that aren't part of what you're looking for, are slowly becoming the basis of your lifestyle choices, the places you go, places you visit. It's really interesting.
Well, the social media marketing boon, and that's exactly what it is, because we all know how much advertising costs. For just look in the US, like a Super Bowl, to get a minute to capture that audience at that time with your message is a phenomenal cost. Knowing that every single person has a walking advertisement present with them at all times in the shape of a mobile phone or a laptop or whatever device they have, that's become an easier, accessible device that they can utilize to market to. So again, and understanding, we've done a previous program where we talked about the hazards of technology itself, the radiation phones emit and the dangers to people not paying attention to what's going on. And as one listener commented, why not talk to each other if you're at the same table? That's all the downside of social media, is that we're not connecting as we once did. Kids get together on a play date and they're all sitting there with their iPads instead of playing as they once did. However, today is about the disruption to our lives utilising that technology, as maverick marketers are taking over in many ways, because the stats are that 97% of those network marketing systems actually fail. But many still, join up. They're like lotto winners. They're hoping, that they get in there, that they get a piece of the pie. So they're now sitting right in front of those mobile devices even more than ever before. So our captive audience for marketing via this media now is exponential.
Oh, no doubt about that at all. Just very simple things that a lot of people wouldn't even know. For argument's sake, unless you deliberately override it and know how to override it, your iPhone actually tracks everywhere you've been. It actually draws a map of where you were on certain times and at certain days, under location, privacy location services, frequent locations and those sorts of things. It starts building a pattern again of your movements. So if you finished work every night, and probably most nights you popped into the local supermarket, and that was your little habit on the way home from work, after a little while your phone will start prompting you, traffic between here and South Melbourne is light, you should arrive at the supermarket in 6 minutes. How did you know I was going to go there? It's not in my diary. I haven't said that I'm actually going there. It's just you've got an expectation of predicting my behaviour and trying to help me with some information. So again, there's systems that are designed to help you with your life, but really, really scary technology of Big Brother having a bird's eye view of who you are, what you do, what you're interested in, and where you're likely to be at any given time.
Exactly, because that element of privacy, and I'm not going to go right into conspiracy theories because we know everyone can go right into that, but, human barcodes is seen in the Hitman movie with Agent, 47, where he has been, genetically changed the same way we genetically modify foods for improvement, we microchip cats and dogs, so when they're lost, we know where to find their owners. Human barcodes is something that I see as an indicator, because we had 25% of Australians were surveyed, and they were happy to pay using PayPal or PayPass technology with a chip implanted into them. And that was a study conducted by Visa. That's already so many people willing to put a barcode or microchip, which to me they're the same. It's going to know it belongs to you and where you are, into them at all times. There's other that have done it as a keyless entry, have had surgically implanted into their hands their own house keys. So they're the only ones that can actually open the door. But being an ex-cop, I know that, your door is not the only way into a place. If someone wants to get in, they're going to find a way to get in. We've got 3D technology where, we're printing meat these days, as well as, digital surgery, which for me is fabulous. I'd probably rather a machine do it than a human being who's had a few too many drinks the night before.
Look, absolutely. The other next evolution, we were talking about our technological DNA, or our barcode, for want of a better term. It's all coming together with the emergence of the next range of technology, which is blockchain. And blockchain is going to change the way everybody basically in the world goes about their life. It's essentially a database of continuous records of everything you do, every transaction that you make. It's built. It can't ever be altered. It can't be changed. Once stamped and time stamped, it's a permanent record of a transaction. Banks are going to be adopting blockchain. Hospitals, medical records, your taxation affairs, It'll overtake the FPOS network of your Visa cards, MasterCards, American Express, etc. It enables it's a multifactorial authentication technology, essentially, which enables a transaction to be validated instantly. So if I send money from one bank to another bank, it's left my bank. I can see that it's left my bank. The other party can't see anything, possibly until the next day. It sort of sits in this cyberspace until everybody can verify that it's real and those sorts of things. With blockchain technology, which banks will be implementing this year, it is instant. It simply goes and says, this is a real person. This person is verified. The receiver of these funds is a real person who's verified. The funds transfer. It gets a timestamp back. Those funds are in that person's account, and the whole thing takes place in a matter of seconds.
So just to go back a little bit. So you said there's several means of verification and authenticity. So, for example, like a fingerprint, be it an eye scan. What sort of modes of identification are being utilised? And I talk about this because just today I've discovered my photo has been utilised on LinkedIn, which is a business directory that has over 467 million members.
Wow.
Directory, but my same headshot that is used for Rosie on LinkedIn, and I've been on LinkedIn for 12 plus years, is now being used by a gentleman called Richard Fry, and I doubt he's called Richard Fry. However, the individual is using that name together with my pretty headshot, as a friend of mine commented, will teach you to be so darn good looking. And even the blokes want to impersonate you. It's like,
how about that?
They're using, how did LinkedIn, that is such a large directory, how did it fail to pick up that the exact same image was already being utilised? It's not like it's a different photo of me taken from somewhere else. It's the exact same headshot.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary out there. Look, data fraud, identity fraud, really, really common. Unfortunately, all too common, and sometimes very, very difficult to do anything about. As a regular consumer, it's very hard to pick up the phone and say, I want to speak to someone at Facebook, I want to speak to someone at Twitter, I want to speak to someone at Google. There's just firewalls that prevent you from being able to find a real person other than filling in an inquiry form online and those sorts of things. They make it extraordinarily difficult for people that have been subjected to that, unfortunately.
So I guess, listeners have asked, is this going to be a safe thing? And the other is, how do we know this system is not going to fail us? I guess I thought myself personally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you mentioned, this block technology, if they already have recorded my fingerprint, which is what we do, within the police force, record, fingerprints, because they don't change. They're individual and unique to you. And even though your prints on your palm might change over the years, your fingerprints do not. So if that is recorded and logged in with a photograph image of me, and that is my identity that I put online, if someone else wants to put a photo of me up, if they don't match it with an equal fingerprint, it should not be accepted. And I would thought that would cancel out, just the use of images online, that you can't post photographs unless you're actually linked to that identity as yourself.
Yeah, understand that. Look, very similar with iris scanning technology and those sorts of things, which is the next evolution of hardware. Your laptops and those sorts of things. Fingerprint scanners on laptops have been out for probably close to 10 years now, where you can actually use it for your password. Iris scanning capability is next. It's if you're travelling out of Australian airports now, it's you just put your passport under the machine and it scans your face. And if your face is exactly the same as the face that's on the passport, you can walk into the country without anyone stopping you, because you are who you say you are.
Yep. And I guess, someone's just commented, is it easy to steal fingerprints? Well, again, in the movies, they do a lot of stealing of fingerprints, but I've not actually seen it in real life in my legal career and background. So, again, we get a little bit confused with what we see on TV and television and what generally occurs in reality. And that's, I've often been comforted by the thought that crooks are often dumb, which is a really good thing because they're the ones that we catch. However, cybercrime, involves a lot of clever individuals because it's anonymous, and that ability to hack and infiltrate, as we've seen with, many large organisations, not just to mention on a small scale, what kids, even kids these days get up to, stealing university exams and tests, just so that they can ace it that way. The terror of technology, to me, we know that technology, the use of mobile phones can be explosive, but it's what we don't know that we should. And that's just something I want to share a little bit for our listeners, of just some practical guidelines to keep themselves protected in the use of everyday use of technology.
Look, sure. The very, very basic things is always sign out of things. If a lot of people, you open up their laptop, turn it on, you're straight into Facebook, you're straight into Twitter. You can often go straight into internet banking because it pops up and it's remembered your customer ID and your password and those sorts of things. It's really convenient for you to do that until somebody steals your laptop. And then they've got access to your entire life. So log into things, log out of things. Don't have obvious password choices. Wherever you can, use a special character rather than just words and numbers.
Exactly. So that way it's not a name that's easily that. For example, how when you type in on the computer and it finishes typing for you or does suggestions, it should be something that can't be suggested.
Absolutely. Yeah, replace the letter S, for argument's sake, with a $sign, or the letter I with an exclamation mark, or the letter E with a number 3, which looks like an E backwards. And just they're not hard to remember once you've actually done them, but they make them really, really hard for somebody to ever try and guess, or for cracking technology to go in, because your key code crackers, which is software that hackers actually use to try and get into things, generally rely heavily on letters and numbers in those algorithms. As soon as you start introducing special characters, it's another whole dynamic of complexity that makes it significantly harder. So there's the same with your mobile phone devices. Always have your mobile phone secure. Always have your Find My iPhone and those sorts of things. That sort of technology enabled. If you lose your phone, if Find My iPhone is enabled, for argument's sake, on an Apple device, you can see where the phone is at that moment. If you say, I left it in the cafe or I left it in the taxi or something, but if it looks like it's actually, been stolen and it's in a vehicle and it's heading in another direction and you've got no scope of getting it back, you can actually remotely wipe your phone. You can actually hit a button on another device and say, delete the entire contents of this phone. And that's another way to try and make yourself secure.
Yes, and also for within your own vehicles, your GPSs, people have them programmed for home. When your car gets stolen and you've got keys in the car, you've just given them an easy invitation.
They've got your car, they know where you live, and probably on the car keys is the key to the house. I've got the jackpot.
Exactly. And the fact that, they've even demonstrated with the remote locking system. We understand now with, Wi-Fi technology and the internet, with radio waves, that, it is available to access things remotely.
Absolutely. It's scary. It really is. So the technology that's designed to make our life easier, unfortunately, in many ways, often makes our life more vulnerable.
Exactly. And as we said, we share a lot of information. We post on social media. We put it out there, for people to comment. Realise that you yourself are liable for absolutely everything that you actually do. And you might say, oh, that was just in the heat of the moment or the spur of the moment. Well, once it's written, it is recorded permanently. They're permanent records. You can't erase them. When you've gone to a location and there's been an armed robbery at that location, your GPS has tracked and logged you at that location, which is a good thing, again, for crooks. But at the same token, it leaves the ability to keep a level of protection and safety in amongst where we know there are violent offenders. We've had trackers for a long time, but at the same token, it leaves people that are vulnerable and at risk at a greater level of risk.
No doubt about that. We shouldn't be scared of technology. We should just make sure we take safeguards to, protect ourselves for it. We talked before about blockchain technology, but blockchain essentially is going to allow Big Brother to know who you are, what you're doing, who you're providing money to, who you're receiving money from, what bills you're paying, all those sorts of things. The stock exchanges, bank transactions, medical, everything will all be recorded. But essentially, if you're a law-abiding citizen who pays your taxes and has nothing to fear, you have nothing to fear.
Now, I laugh at that all in good jest because of the fact that, being a law-abiding citizen and having enforced the law as well, a simple matter like, a traffic matter here that occurred in Australia where an automated administrative error occurred to do with my driver's license, and absolutely no one was able to override it. And we went through every legal recourse and political recourse, and at the end, every single person just went, sorry, because it was in the administrative act, no one had the ability to actually override it. So I simply had to wear a consequence that was actually not earned by myself, more or less. So that's where I see that there's the difficulty. And with people these days with the mentality, not my problem, not my issue, go to this department, not my problem, not my issue. As you mentioned earlier, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on any of these other mass social medias, how do you get a hold of an actual person? And if you do get a hold of the person, do they speak English, or do they have actually any authority to actually address your problem? Therein lies more of our terror with technology.
Absolutely.
So I was going to ask, just in respect of yourself personally, in now working within this industry, what do you see the future? Are we going to be a cashless society?
I've got no doubt that's inevitable. We're going to see more and more business being done in an online presence. So if we think about who are some of the biggest companies in the world right now. We talked about Netflix before. Blockbuster had 5,500 stores in America, probably another 10,000 independent video stores in America. So it's 15,000 retail outlets that paid rent and an electric bill and a phone bill and the gas bill and employed staff and all those sorts of things. You think about all the subsystems that supported that of, delivery drivers bringing stock in, and the Coca-Cola merchant and all those sorts of things. All these businesses completely and utterly wiped out by something that travels across copper wires and fibre optic cable. So Netflix,
exactly.
66 billion. Uber, biggest transport company in the world. They don't own any cars. They don't employ any drivers. They're worth about $62 billion US at the moment. Airbnb, the biggest hotel chain in the world, have no property. They don't own hotels. They don't own rooms. They're just simply this system that enable people to connect and transact. Alibaba's worth about $60 billion, and it's an aggregator site for you to be able to find merchants primarily out of China to build things for you. In Australia, it's a much smaller scale, but the traditional newspaper business was totally wiped out by car sales, realestate.com and Seek, which is the job placement. Between the three of those, it's about 15 billion Australian dollars worth of value. Now, to pro-rata population, 15 billion Australian, it would probably make it about a $200 billion company in America, based on population. So that would make those three sites of I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, or I want to find a job, bigger than Netflix, Uber, Amazon, etc. combined. It's staggering, and they replaced the traditional newspaper.
Yes, and that's looking at that corporate sector, but also looking within, the public sector of government and government ordinances. So, for example, all these different recipients will now be mandated a particular behaviour or outcome that they will be easier able to be regulated. I'm thinking of all the young mums that, the choices are taken away from them that we previously had, because again, if you've got one system that's watching everything you do, it knows if you do what they want you to do or you don't do what they want you to do, and therefore you can then be penalised by not being able to receive within that system, which we're starting to see examples of now with the simple thing like vaccination.
No doubt about that at all. It is. It's a huge thing now. There are records that basically exist. In Australia, if you haven't vaccinated your children, you're not entitled to welfare,
Exactly.
or the parent supporting payments and those sorts of things. And that basically exists because the government can access those records. It's simple.
Pensioners will have it the same, that if you have a house for the pensioner assets test, and they'll know now exactly what its value is. If it's over a certain value, well, you're no longer entitled to be supported in any way. University students will have it. That's the bit that I see scary. I think it's great to be an entrepreneur and be innovative and have the world at your fingertips of what you can do, and you're not limited, restricted by physically having to be in a location or physically having to set up shop at a place, the bricks and mortar businesses that you can build and create now electronically, or you can work digitally to correct and amend and create solutions where people have problems. However, what I do see is the big problem is where we no longer have choices about it anymore. And I'm just wondering whether that what do you call it? Blockchain technology is going to be part of that introduction. And we get these movies from Hollywood earlier to start to precondition us to get used to, this is the way things are moving. This is, our lifestyle that we're moving into. So it's no longer a rude shock when its time does arrive. And I can think of nothing worse than being invaded technologically. I love the ability to turn on and turn off.
Look, agree. Look, ultimately, you can turn off your phone, you can turn off your computer, and you can go for a long walk on the beach, and probably no one will know that you're there. You'll always have those little opportunities to say, what, I'm actually going to I'm going to escape from life for a little while, and as long as you don't need to spend any money along the way, you should be okay. We still live in a world where cash is accepted at most places, but that will rapidly change.
It will, because again, the fraud, it's the oops theory of evolution. We see that there's a problem and we attempt to fix it, and in attempting to fix it, sometimes that spawns 4 or 5 more problems that we didn't foresee beforehand. So again, we attempt to fix those problems, and I'm just, what gets lost along the way, like those that have suffered identity theft know how difficult it is to get that amended and corrected. And I guess, if everyone has that awareness to keep, like for myself, I had my credit cards emptied whilst in the US, fraudulently accessed. And at the time I only had $7 in my wallet. And at the police station, they thought that I'd lost the plot. That's our word for going crazy in Australia, because I started laughing. And they thought, what are you laughing about? And I had found $4 in my handbag. And I said, wow, I've almost doubled my net worth in under a minute. How many people can say they did that? And again, they just thought those loopy Aussies. But again, now I always carry $100 bill in my mobile phone. And some people might think, oh, she's a show off or whatever it is. It's like, no, I'm never being caught with only $7 on my person ever again. It's that surety of having something tangible that's yours. My name and my identity is my business. I do public speaking all around the world, and I get booked because of my level of integrity and the message that I share. So now to discover that someone else is capitalizing on my brand, kick butt, getting rid of bloody useless thoughts, or recently now my photo on LinkedIn, to put it bluntly, it really pees me off. And that's without them being arrested. And, I can just imagine someone in America being arrested as Rosie Picar as I speak. And again, I've got no knowledge of this. It just shows up now on a permanent trail and record digitally that I personally had nothing to do with. And I guess that's the bit that I'm concerned with all the direction where things are going, is because, as I said, every person who creates something, someone else creates it in a way that it can be utilised to work against us.
Well, I'm going to take you on a hypothetical journey now, which I don't believe will ever happen. But the reality is that the technology pretty well exists today for this to happen. So I'll transfer you 10 years into the future, and Rosie P. jumps into her driverless car for a little journey to go and visit a friend. And your driverless car locks the doors and doesn't go where you want it to go. It delivers you to the local police station because you have an outstanding warrant.
Yeah, I didn't like getting in the car to start with because you didn't have a cute bloke beside me driving me. So we'll continue with your hypothetical. So now I'm under arrest.
Yeah, absolutely. But driverless cars are a reality. Yeah, they are here. They're controlled by computers. They're controlled by satellites. And there is no reason at all, from a technology perspective, why they can't be actually controlled by a third party or essentially hijacked, especially by a government agency. Again, you jump into your car, and before the car will start, it's going to determine who you are. It might scan your irises, or you might put your fingerprint on the dashboard and say, right, I've got Rosie Picar in custody. Right now, deliver her to the nearest police station, please, and officer will be waiting out on the footpath for your arrival. You say, no, I'm meant to be having lunch with a friend. I don't want to be here. But the reality is that could happen. Likewise, you owe the tax office some money, or you're in default with the bank, and all of a sudden, your life's shut down. You go to try and tap your card or tap your phone, or wave your magic chip in your wrist to conduct a transaction, and it's denied. They basically shut you down because you're a living organism in this large electronic system now, and somebody other than you is in control of the rules and how that game is played. So again, I'm not saying that's where we are going, but I am saying, from a technology perspective, that is very, very real and very, very possible.
Oh, exactly. As listeners commented, had ever seen the Terminator movie. And as we were mentioning earlier, yes, Hollywood prepares us with information of future technology, so it's not such a shock by the time it comes around. And another question was, why would we want technology to have so much power? Well, we wanted it, and we've used it to replace human intelligence with artificial intelligence. It was meant to make our work life easier and simpler, so we had more downtime to do the things that we enjoy. Labour-saving devices we've always been seeking more and more of. However, those labour-saving devices seem to be turning into not so much life-saving, but life-usurping devices.
Look, absolutely. Look, the technology, you said before, it's designed to try and make our life easy. I'm in the car, I've got an hour to kill, I'm driving home, and I think, I need to do that. So bang, hit the button. Can you put an appointment in my diary for 10 o'clock tomorrow to ring so-and-so regarding a contract? Can you check my diary for next Thursday, please? And I'll tell you what your appointments are for Thursday. And go, great, okay. Can you do this? You can ask it to send a text message. So can you send a text message to Rosie, please? Sure. What would you like that message to say? And you speak and it sends a message to you. It's like having a PA sitting next to you everywhere you go. What's the weather here? What's the best deal on a flight from Sydney to New York at the moment? All sorts of things that it can actually do that's really, really useful. But again, where we started this whole conversation, the more you're allowing a device into your thoughts and your life and your patterns of behaviour, the more that device is going to know more about you than possibly your partner does.
And again, let's not fool ourselves here. Subliminal programming and that ability to influence, be it, it's been a billion plus industry for the longest time. You know, McDonald's use it, the choice of colours, just to make you, you know, desire to go in and utilise their business. You know, Coca-Cola, the shape of their bottle, you know, the best feeling texture. So it's being utilised on all of those ads and every bit of information that crosses our path in order to manoeuvre us into accepting and into agreement of what has already been set, more or less, as an outcome, a direction that we're going, whether we like it or not. You know, we're using PayPass technology here in Australia. It's, you know, a chip in a card. We're getting used to using that card and we love it. And it's going to be soon that we go, well, hang on, I keep losing my card. So let's put the chip somewhere where I'm not going to lose it. Okay, it's going to go into my hand. Great, I've always got my hand with me. Until then, you know, that becomes, you know, it gets contaminated, corrupted, a problem with it. You know, the brain implants now are being utilised to affect neurally, and you know, we're aware that this can be utilised within the military.
Look, no doubt about that. We've always been trying to use a form of artificial intelligence to predict behaviour, or to predict events, or to, you know, predict people's preferences. Just going back to retail, you mentioned before about McDonald's and Coca-Cola and those sorts of things. So we had some really, really interesting study done by the company behind Mars and M&M's in our retail days. And they'd researched lots and lots of people on their patterns of behaviour at retail about what they called their needs state. So if I'm looking to buy a sweet or some confectionery, it could be for various different reasons. You know, I'm feeling a bit sad and emotional and it's going to cheer me up, or it could be I'm feeling really happy about what I've done today and I want to reward myself, or it could be I'm just feeling drained and exhausted and I need something to pick me up. Now, those three products would not be the same product. You know, like a Mars might be something that gives you a little bit of an energy boost. You know, something like a flake or a Turkish delight might be something that's a little indulgent that you want to, you know, actually reward yourself with. And you know, if you're feeling a bit sad and emotional, it'll be whatever your favourite, you know, thing is. And what they actually analysed was, in fast-moving retail environments, especially petrol stations, you know, you're in the queue and then you're next and you say pump 5, and then while you're there, you're scanning your eyes over what's in front of you, trying to make a very rapid choice, and you can't take too long because there's someone behind you and someone behind them. They figured out if they could block products into need states, it would make it much easier for the customer to make a choice, and therefore their conversion rate of the number of customers who actually then picked up a product per transaction from that range significantly increased. So if I'm looking for something to, you know, replenish me because I'm exhausted or I'm flat or I'm tired, and I look down and I see that general range of products and they're all together in the one place, I can go, that's my favourite one of those.
Exactly. Product placement's certainly been prevalent for a long period of time. I'm just going to, because we're coming to the close of the program, I just wanted, most importantly, for yourself personally, because I always like to know what, you know, someone's most extraordinary experience, but what have you learnt so far today with, or over your life with digital technology? What have you learnt that your older self would tell your younger self?
Embrace the change. When I first got my real first major mobile device, it was a BlackBerry, and that's when I entered the corporate world with sort of Blockbuster just after 2000. And I'm an avid record keeper. Every meeting, every conversation, diaries, all those sorts of things. And I was given this device and said, you don't need any of that. This is your diary. This is your appointments. This is everything. And, you know, I think I probably took about 5 years of running systems in parallel and probably wasting a hell of a lot of time before I actually trusted it, that it wouldn't actually let me down, that I wasn't going to forget it was somebody's birthday, or I wasn't going to forget that meeting, that appointment I'd made 2 months in advance, and those sorts of things. And to now live in a world where, you know, at the end of every year, you don't have to buy a new diary and then get your old one and then copy over all your address book and your contacts and your phone numbers and then run through page by page and make sure you got everyone's birthdays. It's
So
just
for you,
there,
it's
it's there forever.
embrace. So for you, it's embrace change. So now, if someone wants to know more about digital disruption, where can they go to, Steve?
Look, our website is obviously all the W's, but DIG, as in Digital Investment Group, and then LTD, as in Limited, digltd.com.au.
Thank
You'll be able
you.
to reach me through there.
Thank you, Steve. For those listeners, you've been listening to w4cy.com, and for more motivation and inspiration that you receive on a digital format, go to www.kickbutt.com.au, because we get rid of those bloody useless thoughts that hold you back. Till next week, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.